love Spider-Man. Growing up, I watched all the Tobey movies. I had Spider-Man costumes for Halloween. I had, the web shooters, the little silly string web shooters. I had Spider-Man toys. I love Venom. I watched Spider-Man cartoons when I could. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I liked all the Marvel characters, but I love Spider-Man. When I could watch the 90s show, I watched the 90s show. When I could watch Spider-Man Unlimited, sometimes it would air on Disney Channel or Disney XD, I would watch that. I would watch Ultimate Spider-Man, which a lot of people hate on now. I would have to go back and watch it to give like a well-rounded opinion on it, but the point is, I love Spider-Man. I recently played and finished the DLCs for the first Spider-Man PlayStation game. Great, loved it, because I fucking love Spider-Man. But alas, I am a fake fan, as I have never really... I've always wanted to be a comic book fan, because I love comic book characters, but I never really read comic books. The only Spider-Man comic run that I've really sat down and read a good portion of, never finished, but I did read a good portion of it, is the early Ultimate Spider-Man comics. I forget where I stopped. Gwen had died, she was a clone, something or other. Never finished it, but I really enjoyed it, and that, by default, has to be my favorite, because it's the only one I've read, and I don't even know if that's going to change, because I am rereading it alongside what I'm about to talk about, and it still holds up. I have minor criticisms, but it still holds up. You'll find a Spider-Man! I really wanted to get into Spider-Man. I wanted to get into 616 Spider-Man, because I think that'll make me a real fan, and I need to be a real Spider-Man fan. So I, looked online, like, where's a good place to start for Spider-Man? I bought a subscription to Marvel's Unlimited. I want to know, when's a good place to start? Like, what issue, what storyline is a good place to start? And about half of the results are like, just start at the beginning. All the way back in 1963. Just start at the beginning. So, I started at the beginning. So, a lot of people are saying, like, no, they're good. The 60s Spider-Man, like, the early stuff, it's still really good. And I was like, okay, I've seen some 60s comics. And they weren't great. But I'll give it a chance. So, and, I'd like to clarify, not everyone said start at the beginning. Some people said start at Kraven's Last Hunt. The reason I didn't want to do that is because I don't have a lot of background for Kraven as a character, And I'm not saying you have to read his first appearance to learn that background. I think it would be better for me to spend some time with a character before I dive into a story that's completely focused on that character, right? If it was a Green Goblin-centered story, I would have dove right into that, because I know a good chunk of stuff about the Green Goblin. But a lot of people say Kraven's Last Hunt. Well, I don't know a lot about Kraven. A lot of people said the Todd McFarlane run, and that might have been it. I don't know what was happening during Todd McFarlane's run. I just feel like I would have been lost in a lot of the cases, and a lot of the suggestions that people made, I really feel like I would have just been lost. And I don't want to be lost. But how you be lost and start in the middle of a character's existence, right? Sometimes you do have to start at the beginning. So, I started at the beginning. So how did I like 60s Spider-Man?
More than I thought, less than you'd think.
Yeah. So, there were things that did surprise me in a good way. But then there were also things that did not surprise me in a bad way. Yeah, let me get this out of the way. So from what I understand, from what I gather from reading these books, these 80 issues, are the fact that the 60s were a good time for creating a character, for establishing the bones of a character, what a character is at their core. The core of what Spider-Man is laid out well within these 80 issues. His flaws, his strengths, what makes him truly one of the greatest superheroes, and one of my personal favorite fantasy characters. Okay? The 60s were not a good time for well-written narratives or action sequences. Dude, it's so fucking boring. It was so fucking hard to read some of these. Everything a character does, that character explains in depth and detail why, how, when, where they're doing the action that they're doing. It's really like two kids playing, you know, like play fighting. You know, it's like, well, I'm strong. Well, no, I'm stronger. Well, I'm smarter. It's like, well, I'm gonna throw you off a roof. It's like, well, I'm gonna like make a web cushion. Spider-Man does this like fucking 40 times in the decade of the 60s. He makes a web cushion really fucking fast, and then lands on it. He could just swing away, but he chooses to make the web cushion to cushion his fall, and then he ends up getting really hurt in the end. Like always, he ends up breaking his fucking like arm or like dislocating his shoulder. It happens like almost every time. You'll find a Spider-Man. I can't criticize art well because I'm not an artist, so I don't have like a meaningful perspective on any of this, but I especially don't have a meaningful perspective when it comes to art. I will say backgrounds are not super detailed in the early Spider-Man comics. I don't know when art gets good. It is within the decade. Art does get pretty good within the decade. I don't know when it gets good. I just know that early on, Steve Ditko did not know how to draw scenes that take place at night. Half the scenes is explicitly stated they're supposed to be at night. Every scene in this comic looks like it takes place at the same time of day. Every scene looks like it takes place in like high noon or like 11 a.m. Like, the shadows don't let you know that it's supposed to be at night. Dude, the sun's fucking out. I don't care. Like, the sky is blue. The sky's blue and the fucking sun's out. But Spider-Man's like, man, I should really get to bed. It's really late. Or, like, he'll find a break-in, and it's like, why are these guys breaking in at, you know, in broad daylight? It's like, oh, these thugs think they can get away with breaking in at night when no one's looking. It's like, it is not fucking night. Here are some misconceptions that I had. I had two of them. I had two misconceptions about Spider-Man before going into reading the original Spider-Man comics. And by the way, so do you. You have misconceptions too. Unless you're like a diehard fan, like I'm about to be. One of these in about 300 in about 800 comics, I will be a diehard Spider-Man fan. But unless you're gonna be like me in like a year or two from now, you did not know that for one, Uncle Ben did not, nor has he ever in the decade of the 60s, told Peter that with great power must also come great responsibility. He didn't say it. He did not say it. At no point did he say that. You know who said it? Fucking Stan Lee. Stan Lee said it in a narrator speech bubble. Which, by the way, just a side note on the narrator stuff. I skip them now. I skip the narrator stuff because they're not important. Everything that the narrator can tell you in a comic book, he can tell you visually, and he often does, right? Like 9 times out of 10, you'll get the information that's written there. You're kind of taking up space for no reason. I know that this is an issue that also bleeds into the 70s because I'm reading X-Men and I started at giant-sized X-Men, and while the narration is better written, it's also almost equally meaningless. Like, there's some nuggets of information that, you know, you can kind of need going into it. Obviously, narration by a character in the story is, or can be, necessary to illustrate what a character is thinking or feeling or their plans, right? A villain monologue is a type of narration that's pretty, I mean, that's pretty necessary. A lot of the times, Peter will narrate his life. That's very necessary. And he will continue. Batman does it. And then basically, every character in every comic book does it. I'm not saying big blocky speech bubbles on top of a comic book is pointless. I'm just saying I don't care what the writer has to say, right? Within the confines of the story. I care what the characters have to say. I just feel like if you're using a visual medium, narration is fucking pointless. Because you're supposed to convey most of the information, at least half. You're supposed to convey at least half of the information through the drawings. I understand that this is like a product of its time. I think that doesn't necessarily negate it from criticism. That's my 2 cents, though. But yeah, Stan Lee says in a speech bubble that with great power comes great responsibility. Good catchphrase. Kind of cute to that. It was him that said it and not Uncle Ben. But also at the same time, like, it's Peter's entire philosophy. And I'm sure it'll be retconned that, yes, Uncle Ben did say it. And maybe it'll be in, like, the 80s or 90s or early 2000s. I don't know. The second misconception that I had, and maybe you did too, I know there's like really big comic book fans that have this misconception, because I got this misconception from them. I'm looking at you, Nikhil.
Now let me think. You're in high school. You should be right around Gwen Stacy. I don't know who that is. At least my first girlfriend.
All right, you're like one of my favorite fucking comic book creators on TikTok. I'm calling you the fuck out. All right. So the order in which Spider-Man has like relationships, like love interest, it goes, here's what I thought. I'll tell you what I thought. I thought the order of Spider-Man love interest goes Gwen Stacy, and then she dies, and then Mary Jane, right? And I don't think Nikhil necessarily believes this, but I thought that Mary Jane was like not only his rebound after Gwen Stacy dies, but also like it's kind of like what he needed for his like character. Because the way I thought about it was Gwen Stacy, she's like this, preppy, kind of a little bit snooty, but overall sweet character, really big, like, daddy's girl, she straight-laced, straight-edge kind of character. And then Mary Jane, she's like this party animal, and she's wild and free. All that stuff might still be the case. Like, that might, like, I don't know, I haven't read into the 70s, I don't know what happens after Gwen dies. All that stuff may still be. Peter Parker's first love interest is Betty Brant. And then, Betty Brant, the really hot chick who's J. Jonah Jameson's receptionist in fucking the Sam Raimi movies, and also you probably saw her in cartoons. You probably saw her in the Ultimate Comics as like a background character. Yeah, Betty Brant. That's Peter's first love interest. And then he breaks things off with her, and then you want me to be honest with you? He kind of starts dating, like, he meets Gwen Stacy first, but he starts dating Mary Jane Watson before dating Gwen. Now, obviously, he goes from Mary Jane to Gwen, and Gwen's like his main girl for a while. By the way, it's like 1970. It's the year 1970 for me, and it's like, I think it's like March, and I haven't seen Mary Jane Watson for like 10 issues. Yeah, I mean, like, they talk about her, But she's just like nebulous. She's just in the ether. I don't know. I haven't seen anything about her. We're getting off topic. That's a whole nother decade. I'm gonna have to make another video about it. But yeah, that's just another misconception that I had. On Betty Brant's relationship with Peter, I thought it was cute for a while until it wasn't. Until it was fucking stupid. We'll get into that later. I want to get into the bad guys, the rogues gallery. Other than Venom, basically all of Spider-Man's rogues gallery came from the 60s. And, like, all of them have origins in the 60s. Anyone that you can think of, basically, has, like, well, you know, it was unveiled before 1969. Some of them did not stick so well. And I have a list here, and we're gonna read them off, the ones that didn't stick, and we're gonna talk about them. The Enforcers and the Big Man, aka Frederick Foswell. The J. Jonah Jameson Robot. The Crime Master. The Cat Burglar. The Looter. A Robot. I'm sure I'm not even gonna remember what the fuck I'm talking about while I'm editing this. A guy named Joe. Jonah's son. He got superpowers. And then just beat the shit out of Spider-Man. The Second Vulture. Man Mountain Marco. And kind of the Prowler. I'll get more into that. So, I'll explain why I don't think they came, or why I think they never came back. So we'll start with the Enforcers and Big Man. The Enforcers have kind of come back in a way. Like, they were in Spectacular Spider-Man for like an episode, and they were like secret agents or like robbers or something. And they were in the Ultimate Comics at the beginning when Spider-Man meets Kingpin. The Enforcers are cool, and I think they should have a comeback. You have like a diverse team of 3. You know, you have a big guy, his name is Ox. You have a little guy who can fight good, his name is Fancy Dan. That's a good name, by the way. And you have Montana, who's from Montana, and he, like, rustles cows and has, like, a fucking lasso. I don't know, I like the Enforcers. I think there's a place for them. I don't really know who came first, if it was, the Sinister Six, or if it was the Enforcers, but I do think that the Enforcers are kind of like a proto-Sinister Six, you know? Spider-Man is fighting these 3 different people with these 3 different, radically different fighting styles, right? So he has to contend with someone who is slow, but really sturdy and hits hard. And then he has to fight someone who maybe doesn't, his punches don't really hit as hard, but he's really fast, really nimble, and he has speed, and like he can use the speed to do more damage to him, right? And then Montana is like a mid-range fighter. He has his lasso. He can bound. He has to be bound while avoiding getting his shit rocked by Ox and Fancy Dan. So, and like, you kind of see the same kind of thing with the Sinister Six, which, by the way, the first time the Sinister Six comes up is in the Spider-Man Annual. I don't want to read it. It's very long. I just don't want to read it. I'm gonna have to read the annuals eventually. I don't want to read this one. But it's the same kind of concept, you know? It's all these different villains from Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery, and he struggles when it's just one-on-one, but here he is fighting them all at the same time, so he has to be quick on his feet. I like it. You know, and I like the Enforcers, and I like the idea of having the character have to think of a way to deal with enemies at the same time. The JJJ Robot. I didn't like either of the comics this thing was in. So, okay, here's the background. J. Jonah Jameson partners with, like, a roboticist, or, like, a scientist, and he, like, fucking, I don't know, he builds a robot because he hates Spider-Man. He's like, hey, do you want to control it? I'll set you up on a Skype call. I'm being serious. I know it was it was the 60s, but he sets Jonah up on a fucking Skype call, and Jonah's face is on the front of the robot, and Spider-Man talks to him, so I know he can hear Spider-Man. He's on a fucking Skype call, right? So J. Jonah Jameson is on a Skype call controlling the robot. He's on the robot, and the robot is, like, specifically designed to fucking kill Spider-Man. The robot idea is cool because it has like stretchy arms and it's like, again, specifically made to kill Spider-Man. I think that's cool. I also think it's pretty cool that a lot of the times Jonah fights Spider-Man in the press and like with like public opinion. That's his weapon against Spider-Man. And that's what makes, that's why I think makes Jonah an interesting antagonist. A lot of people don't consider him an antagonist because, you know, Peter never boxes with him. But arguably Jonah is like the most well-written, maybe not well-written. He is the antagonist that has best stood the test of time. You don't really need to update Jonah's character. He just is a guy that hates Spider-Man, and his reasons for hating Spider-Man are timeless. And I like him. But you know, you never see Peter fight him like with his fist. So to put him in that situation, I think can work. I think a little bit of it does undermine the character's purpose, but you could do it. But the reason I think it doesn't work like this is, you know what, I take it back. It doesn't work at all. For all the reasons I just say, I'm changing my own mind. I completely changed my mind. I don't think it's interesting. Well, I think it is interesting. I don't think it works at all. I don't think it can work for two reasons. For one reason, all the stuff I just said. Jonah is not a violent person. He doesn't even want to kill Spider-Man. He doesn't want to rob a bank. Jonah just doesn't like vigilantes. He thinks cops should handle crime and cops should also arrest Spider-Man. Why the fuck would Jonah take matters into his own hands in order to fight Spider-Man? That doesn't make any goddamn sense for his character. So, yeah, you just saw wires connected inside my little pea brain. Another reason I don't think this works as well is because when Spider-Man fights a villain, there's usually a lot of property damage and a lot of people's lives being put in peril. And both sides of the fight are able to get away from it because they're both wearing masks and they both have superpowers. So Spider-Man can whip away, and ideally the villain does not get away because Spider-Man catches him and like webs him up. But if they do get away, the cops can't really follow them because they can fly, or they can like turn into sand and fly away in the wind or something. You know, usually a villain can get away and not be pursued by cops, and cops don't know what they look like because they're wearing masks. In this case, Jonah's face is on the front of the robot. He's broadcasting live on the robot. And it's been a while since I read the comic, but I'm pretty sure, it's pretty, you can't do that, because this is just another type of vigilanteism, right? So Jonah's breaking the law in front of everyone. Everyone can see Jonah's face on the front of the robot. No one's asking him about it, right? And I'm sure he breaks, like, a brick wall, or wrecks a building, or wrecks a street. Logically, it just doesn't work. Crime Master. I don't even fucking remember what Crime Master fucking does, dude. Crime Master is a stupid name. It's not fun. Every fucking member of every rogues gallery and every superhero story is a master of crime, or else they wouldn't be an interesting fucking villain. Obviously, you're a crime master. Like, you need a gimmick. Molten Man, Molten Man, his whole thing is, like, his skin bonded with molten metal. And what that resulted in the comic that I read, in the I think it was in the 60s, his only thing is, like, now he's super strong and his skin is indestructible. He's just Luke Cage, but ugly. He's like a pea Luke Cage. He's a piss man. He's Mr. Piss Man. He's Piss Luke Cage, right? But, like, the difference is I like Luke Cage and I don't like I don't like Molten Man. I don't care about Molten Man, like, at all. I don't even remember why he's doing stuff. He just got powers and he's like, I guess I'm gonna go rob a bank. That's his whole thing, you know? So he doesn't really even have a character motivation or anything. The Looter. Dude, I don't even fucking... I looked up all these villains before I, I wrote them down. I don't remember the fucking looter. I don't know, man. He loots. Oh, robots. What the fuck do you mean, a robot? Oh, I remember what this is. Some scientist made a robot, and it went crazy, and it, destroyed the school. A guy named Joe. So, in this one, there was, a boxer, and his name was Joe, and he was really bad at boxing. So, they made him a movie star, because he was handsome, but he was really bad at being a movie star. And then he got superpowers? I don't know. I don't fucking know. But he got superpowers, and he was delirious, and he went crazy. I think it was, a rock. I think a rock did it. But, like a space rock. I think a space rock gave him superpowers. And then he, I don't know, he, started beating people. And then Spider-Man beat him up. Jonah's son. I'm not kidding. The same exact fucking thing happened. Jonah's son gets superpowers. Jonah convinces him to fight Spider-Man. Jonah's son goes crazy. Jonah's son tries to kill Spider-Man. I think at the time Spider-Man was accused of a crime, but then even after he was proved to not have committed the crime, Jonah's son still wanted to kill him. And then after he loses his superpowers, he just goes back to normal. He's an ally of Spider-Man after that. The second Vulture. Why? I mean, why even... I don't even know why they made him. He's not he doesn't look cooler or more interesting than the first Vulture. The first Vulture, the whole reason he works, he's this old man, and he looks like a bird. His head makes him look like a bird. His nose is big, and it looks like a beak. So he looks like a bird. So he's the Vulture. This guy, his name's Draco or something, and he's just a guy. He has black hair, and he has a square head, and he looks dumb. Man Mountain Marco. This guy, I think, can actually work. I think he could work a lot better in a Punisher story, a Daredevil story, a Luke Cage story. Fuck it, make him a vampire, put him in Blade. His whole thing is he's just big and strong. He doesn't have superpowers. Spider-Man could easily take him in a one-on-one. He works for, the Magia, he's a mobster, or he's, an enforcer. And then the last thing I wrote was, kind of the Prowler. So... the Prowler before Into the Spider-Verse was, not a well-known Spider-Man villain. And, shit, part of that is, because, apparently, and I got spoiled on this today, apparently he gets fucking replaced. Apparently the cat burglar comes back. I don't even... did I go over the cat burglar? He's a fucking cat burglar. He burglars homes. But apparently the cat burglar turns out to be... he's gonna be the Prowler. But the first Prowler is Hobie Brown, who you will know as Spider-Punk. But he's the Prowler in his first appearance. So that's why I say kind of the Prowler. Because, you've heard of the Prowler. You watched Into the Spider-Verse. He's a good villain into Spider-Verse. And he's a good villain in fucking Spider-Man. He's so the Prowler is the villain that ended off the decade. He was in 1969. I think it had to have been December, right? And then it went on to 1970. So the Prowler's story was a really good story. I think it was 2 issues. Hobie Brown is this kind of downtrodden guy. His girl left him. He's an inventor, and he can't get his ideas out there, and his boss doesn't respect him, and it's implied that his boss is kind of racist. He's just his whole experience mirrors Peter's in so many ways, because he's just a guy who life has not been kind to, and unlike Peter, the Prowler uses his inventions to turn to crime, and then he hopes that he can steal stuff and then give it back, and then I'll make him a hero. Which I will admit, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. That's stupid. I don't know why he would think that, because he robs these people in broad daylight. Not broad daylight. He does it at night, but he people see that he's stealing shit. So when you bring it back, I mean, they're still gonna know that you stole it. So what even is the point? It doesn't matter. It's less about the character motivations and more about what it means to Peter's character. What I think Spider-Man is missing in these comics and in movies is like a connection. Peter isn't really connected with his villains in the comics so far. I'm sure there will be connections later. In the movies, they usually try to make the villain some sort of mentor or father figure. With the Tobey Maguire trilogy, well, just the two, 1 and 2. In 1, it's Norman Osborn. He's sort of a father of Peter. He helps him after his uncle passes. It's Harry's dad, but like he's always like really nice to Peter, right? So it's his best friend's dad, and Norman Osborn sees Peter as family, and I think Peter sees him the same way. And then the next movie, Peter sees Doc Ock as a sort of mentor figure. He is someone who is older and wiser, and they connect with each other on science. It's not like they spend a lot of time together before Doc Ock goes bad, but you can still see those feelings. Peter really looks up to Octavius in the movie, and this sort of repeats in later iterations, and also in the video game. And I haven't played Spider-Man 2, but in Spider-Man PS4, the first one, Doc Ock is completely, like 100% mentor, and he's the main villain. He's that's a little rough. Maybe not the main. Well, you know what? The main villain is Negative Man, I believe. Also, sort of a mentor figure. He runs the charity, and he's like a family friend. Less of a mentor figure, but still, he's someone that I think Peter looked up to Negative Man. But yeah, so you see that, but like that's just kind of one trope, and everyone else is just a common criminal. In the comics, Peter doesn't have a relationship with Doc Ock. Doc Ock is just a guy that has these arms. He goes crazy. The only one that Peter really has a connection to is the Green Goblin with Norman Osborn. And it's basically the same in like the movies you've seen, right? But with the Prowler, you really there's this connection because they're around the same age. They're basically equals. They're around the same age. They're around the same point in life. They're going through essentially the exact same struggles. Obviously, Peter's not a victim of racism, but if we're talking about class, if we're talking about relationship issues, if we're talking about like money stuff, being anxious, because you're young but you have ambitions, but the world's not kind to you, Peter relates to Hobie, and Hobie relates to Peter, at least on that level. Obviously, Hobie's going through a little bit more issues. And, there's this really nice part at the end of the story where Hobie tells Peter all of, the shit that he's been going through, and Peter's like, you know what, man? You haven't killed anyone. You haven't hurt anyone. I stopped you from stealing the shit that you were gonna steal, so you really haven't even stolen anything. Just go home. It sounds like, look, dude, you need a break. And I've been there too. So just don't do it again, man. See you later. Or never. Hopefully never. Hopefully I never see you again. Right? And I don't know. I just really liked it. I think it was a really strong way to end the decade. And and they were genuinely good comics. You'll find a Spider-Man. When does Spider-Man get good? When do I think Spider-Man gets good? You guys ever read To Kill a Mockingbird before? I read it in high school, and I remember liking it. I remember the class liking it, at least when I talked to them about it. As much as you can like reading a book that you're forced to read when you're 15 or whatever. And then, of course, we watched the movie, the black and white movie, so, whenever, you guys remember whenever you had you read a book and they made a movie of it, so okay, we'll have a movie day after we finish the book, and then you get to have a movie day, and maybe you can take some notes, or just watch it, or just fucking goof off, who gives a fuck, right? But yeah, that's always nice, that's always a joy. But yeah, I liked the book okay. The class liked the book okay. But weirdly enough, our teacher made us skip most of it. Not most of it, made us skip a lot of it. Apparently, there was just boring parts that didn't, in her opinion, didn't pertain to the story. Now, the result of that is we only got to read the interesting parts. The thing that comes to mind is the court stuff, I think, at the time, and yeah, if I was 15 then and I liked the court drama stuff, I think I'd like it more now. Because I'm not so smooth-brained and stupid. At least I don't think I am. But, that was the result of getting to skip basically half the book, if I remember correctly. It was a lot. It was a good chunk of the book we skipped. You could argue that our teacher didn't teach it right, that she deprived us of getting to experience the book. That actually, those parts that she skipped, while maybe not as interesting as the court drama, was imperative to the plot and understanding it. It had really important world building, or it had something to say. Maybe there was like philosophy buried in those so-called boring parts. Now, I don't even know if they were that boring, because I didn't get to read them. You could make that argument. But see, I've read most of Spider-Man in the 60s Spider-Man. I've read most of it. I can tell you that that half of each of these fucking comic books are easily skippable. All the fight scenes, skippable, right? They're boring and stupid, and Spider-Man wins. That's all you have to know. But, just like how To Kill a Mockingbird is a good book, it also has boring parts that some straight literature high school teachers will have you skip them. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And there's a lot of interesting parts. And there's a lot of parts that you will be entertained by because it is well written. The same basically applies to Spider-Man. You could argue that Spider-Man was good from his first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15. You could argue that. Like the story of a guy getting fucking powers and he's using them for his own personal benefit, or even the benefit of his family, and he's not using them for like a social good. And then that gets his uncle killed. Like that's a good story. All the Peter Parker stuff is good. All of it. In the 60s, all the Peter Parker stuff is good. The way in which he balances, or the way he doesn't balance his life with, between Spider-Man and Peter Parker. That's all really good and interesting, and he has relatable, well-written problems. This is where we get to my main criticisms involving the Peter Parker side of the Spider-Man story, and that is Betty Brant. I don't like a lot of the Betty Brant stuff. At the beginning it was fine, it was cute, but there did come a point in the story where Peter had to break things off with Betty. The story called for them to separate, and Peter took 4 or 5 issues to break things off with Betty. Now, 4 or 5 issues might not sound like a lot, but so 2 things. Let me remind you of 2 things. For one, in the early days of Spider-Man, a page could have up to 9 panels. In like a 3x9 grid. So there would be, 9 small panels, but they would all be packed with text. Obviously there'd be visuals too, but they all have like really large speech bubbles that took up half the panel. Thank God I read this on a screen, like on a phone. I could zoom into it, because if I read it on an actual page, I would need a fucking magnifying glass. Shit's insane! But yeah, so, and each comic, I believe, had 25 pages, and up to 9 panels, sometimes 6, but up to 9 panels. So that's kind of like a lot of, like, you know, good deal of reading. Not only that, but you have to keep in mind, like, I have the privilege of kind of binging these issues, right? I read them one after the next, after the next, after the next. And I could get them done within, you know, a week, maybe a couple days, right? But if you were, you know, in the 60s, you were a kid in the 60s, you had your fucking high-waisted pants, and you like comic books, you would... Let me remind you, these issues were monthly. So there was a month in between each issue. You'd have to wait months for this relationship to fucking end. And you already kind of know, like, if you have, like, enough media literacy, if you have enough critical thinking skills, you know that this relationship is not going to last. You can kind of feel it coming. And I'm sure it is, because I do have, like, the foresight. Like, I know that Betty Brant is not the main love interest of Peter. That's going to be Gwen Stacy. That's going to be MJ. That's going to be Black Cat later. So eventually, Betty Brant will be phased out of the story. Basically, what I'm trying to convey is old comic books are not paced very well. I don't think this is a problem with Spider-Man specifically. I think it's a problem with old comic books. They're just not paced as well. The stories drag their feet a lot more than newer stories. Again, if you know, look at Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man will dedicate one page, like one panel. It would be a spread. It'll be a spread, and the spread will convey more or less the same information as 9 panels, and it will do it in a quarter of the dialogue and a quarter of the drawing. So I really think, I mean, I know that if I had to guess, like, more work probably gets done in the art aspect of newer comic books, but yeah, I mean, you have to be saving paper and ink by by fixing the pacing, and I do think pacing is better than it used to be, you know. There's actually good villain moments, and I think they're worth pointing out. Moving on from, you know, Betty Brant and the pacing, which I didn't know I was gonna go that much into pacing, because the main criticism was supposed to be Betty Brant. But moving on from the negatives, here's something a little bit more positive. Very early on, there is actually some pretty good villain moments. The one that really comes to mind is in the second issue, actually, because in the second issue, we get introduced to the Vulture. So the premise is there is a truck or like a van coming into town to transfer diamonds. I think it's like one jewelry store to another, but this truck's coming in to transfer diamonds to a jewelry store, basically. And the Vulture decides to rob it. And he tells everyone, I'm going to rob this diamond truck. I'm going to steal these diamonds. He broadcasts this to the city in, you know, very old school villain fashion. So the day comes, the diamonds are being transferred, and the whole fucking police department is in the town. Spider-Man is also there. Like, Peter Parker is in the crowd looking for the Vulture. And the thing about it is, everyone's looking to the sky because everyone knows the Vulture flies. So everyone's like, there's no way the Vulture is going to be able to get the diamonds without the police. And I, the reader, am reading this. I'm like, how the fuck is the Vulture going to pull this off? Because literally everyone is looking at the sky. This motherfucker comes from the sewer. He lifts a manhole, he takes the diamonds, and he flies down through the sewers. And I'm like, holy fuck! That's a good twist! Someone was thinking. Right? Was this Stan Lee? Did Stan do this? Stan, you son of a bitch, you fucking... Rest in peace. Stan, you fucking... You madman? That was a really good... That was smart writing. It was. And you have to give credit where credit's due. Now, of course, a lot of the following issues are, like, really painful to read. Like, they're very boring. But, I mean, they really started off the series with, I'm gonna say it, kind of a banger. I really enjoyed the second issue of Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man gets good in 1968. I can't point out a specific issue, but it's 1968. When was 33 written? Let's see. 33 was written in 66. This is not now, so yeah. And that about does it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Yes, this took kind of a longer time than I wanted it to. I got addicted to Silk Song. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I got fucking crazy addicted to Hollow Knight, and then immediately Silk Song after. I'm winding down from that. But, you know, yeah, we're back. We're back. Big I do have to say this. Big thank you to Nearsick, personal friend of mine. She drew my bear avatar in high school, and when I asked her to draw this Spider-Man bear, I offered to pay for it, and she said no. And she just wanted a shout out. So please go check her out. She's very talented. Please go check out her Instagram and her Tumblr. Buy a picture if you want, if you're into that. Thank you guys for watching. I know this was a little sloppy. It was a little, you know, I'm still learning, you know. I'm still learning the editing, the just talking behind a camera. And I'm still learning video composition. The next one, I hope, will be better. But if you made it this far, I assume that you liked it. And if you liked it, you know, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for being on this journey with me. Peace out.